Hi, today I'm here with Dr. Charlotte Markey, professor, psychologist, and researcher at Rutgers University, and the author of an upcoming book due out in September, The Body Image Book for Girls, Love Yourself and Grow Up Fearless. So the first thing I want to talk about is what has people's eating habits, teenagers in particular, during COVID, has it changed?
Yeah, I think all of our eating habits have changed to a certain extent because we have access to different foods than we usually do. Our system of obtaining food has changed in many of our households. I remember, in the early weeks, like yelling at one of my own teenagers, "You can't eat that," because, it was the ingredient for a meal I was supposed to make in 2 weeks or something. So I think we're all thinking a little more carefully about food. Because just the issue of access has changed, and that's unusual for many of us to not feel like we can kind of get what we want usually when we want it.
Although by now access is a little easier. In my house, the amount of snacking was insane. And now those children have left my house and gone back to their places. So it's a little easier, but what happens when there's a lot of snacking going on?
Snacking isn't inherently bad. Like, snacking gets an unfortunate kind of bad rap, I think, but snacking can be good. If you're hungry, you should eat. So call it a snack, call it a meal, call it whatever you want. The tricky thing is that we like to quote unquote snack on food that's really palatable. So like chips or candy or sweets. And so, if you're worried about your kids overdoing it, buy fewer chips. I mean, it's really just the easiest way. It sounds so silly and basic, but if it's not there, you can't snack on it.
True. So you have said that dieting is never the answer. You wrote a book about it, and tell us why that is true.
Yeah, my first book was called Smart People Don't Diet, and after years and years of studying weight and body image issues as a scientist, I just kept coming back to how come the public doesn't know this? There's all these diets all the time, everywhere, a new one every couple of years, it seems like, and everyone tries them all. And why? Because the science suggests this is not effective. And in fact, it's usually counterproductive and can be really psychologically maladaptive. So we really don't want, especially kids, to grow up dieting because it really changes how they think about food in a very unfortunate way. It becomes like, this is good and this is bad and I must avoid this. And what happens for all of us once something becomes forbidden fruit, literally, right? We want it that much more. So if we're really thinking all the time about wow, that one thing I can't have, right? So many of these diets that tell us to eliminate carbs these days, all of a sudden it's like bread is so forbidden. And then what's going to happen as soon as you allow yourself some bread, you're going to completely overdo it on bread, right? So it should be this totally benign food. It's just bread. I mean, of course, bread can be wonderful, but, so we don't want young people, especially, to grow up with this mentality that I think way too many people of our generation have grown up with, which is that, you're a bad person, foods are bad, the sort of moralization of all of this.
So how do we change that? I mean, when you're battling with either the worry of overweight or the worry of an eating disorder, it's like, how do we neutralize food for our families?
It's interesting because it's like food is both more important and less important than I think we give it credit for being in some ways. And so we want to have generally healthy food in the house. We want to enjoy food. We want to be involved as a family in preparing food. And then that's it. That's kind of should be the end of the story for the most part. We don't want to obsess about it. We don't want to talk about it a lot. We don't want to say things ever in front of our kids like, oh, I can't believe I just ate all of that. We want our kids to have kind of just this more neutral relationship with food where they appreciate that it's nourishing, that it's important, that it's a good part of their health, but that it's not something that takes up like all this mental space.
If you have a kid who we've already developed bad habits in our house, and dieting isn't the answer to that, how do we go from bad habits to better habits, without buying into the next fad diet, or even, one on the
Right.
in there forever?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is really tricky, and it depends on the age of your kid, right? So is your kid in high school and they're coming to you because they're upset about their weight or something someone said? Or do you know for some reason you've had a conversation with them, or you can tell by their behavior and their attempt to change what they're eating, that this is something on their mind, right? So if they're sort of at that stage where they're aware of it, it's on their mind, they're upset, then you maybe want to have a conversation with them. I think sometimes adults, we don't always give teenagers enough credit, right? And so this is complicated stuff, but it doesn't mean they can't get it, right? So we can say, listen, I've been doing some reading, or I watched this video, or I read this book, and I'm really surprised at how ineffective these approaches to changing our weight are. Like, do you know 98% of the time this is not going to work? And in fact, most people gain weight. And instead, they just develop sort of a disordered relationship with food, and the worst case scenario, an eating disorder. And I don't want that to happen to you. So I think we need to just really, as a family, rethink how we're thinking about food. And to have there be some dialogue. Like, I mean, by the time kids are teenagers, they know, like, we don't have this all figured out as parents. They've gotten that loud and clear, right?
Bummer.
I know. We can't even pretend anymore. So, I think it's okay to admit that, like, this is complicated. Like, the way I'm used to thinking about this is like, I'm going to go on a keto plan or a paleo plan, or I'm going to go do Jenny Craig and I'm going to lose weight. But everything I'm learning now suggests that this is not the right way to think about it. And I need to understand how to eat foods I enjoy, that are good for me, that are nourishing, and not obsess about it, because there's just more important things in life to obsess about.
Okay, so you touched a little bit on body image.
Yeah.
How do we, with the underlying shame that goes around being overweight, and with the glorifying of models who are unhealthily thin, how do we help our daughters grow up with a different sense of body image?
I think we want to be really supportive. We do not want to offer any criticism of their bodies ever, right? It's just off the table. It doesn't matter what you think. And we also don't want to offer any criticism of our own bodies ever, because then we're modeling that that's normal and acceptable. And that is the last thing we want our kids to think. We want them to grow up feeling okay about who they are, and to think that who they are is more important than how they look. And I know it sounds super idealistic, but that's our job as parents, is to be idealistic on behalf of our kids, to want them to occupy a better world than we do. And fortunately, there's a body positivity movement that we can, connect with in this cultural moment, this time. So it wouldn't just be us. It's not just our voices as parents or educators, right? We can also channel the Lizzos of the world and other celebrities and activists who really started to engage with these ideas that, like, listen, as a woman, you don't need to occupy less space. Like, be who you are, accept who you are, go out there and do great things in the world. And don't let anyone tell you that how you look is going to prevent that from happening.
When you talk about body positivity movement, is there actually like a place to send people to kind of read more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one place to start, of course, I'll shamelessly sell the Body Image Book for Girls. We do have some references in the book. You can pre-order it now. We have a webpage affiliated with the book, which is also thebodyimageBookforgirls.com. I have developed, if you go to the news section on the bodyimagebookforgirls.com, a whole list of body positivity resources. So these are people, for the most part, they're on social media. That's where young people are, and that's where they are. And there's, I don't know, 60 or something of them that I've compiled, and it's an ongoing project I started this summer, because parents always say, like, well, what should my kid be looking at on social media? Like, I can't take it away, so can I direct them in a positive way? And yes, there's like so many people who are activists, registered dietitians with the Health at Every Size perspective, psychologists like myself, celebrities. There's just so many people out there that, you know, I'm connected to all of them, especially in Instagram, and I'm learning things all the time. And it really challenges even some of my beliefs. And it's also really fun because when I go on Instagram, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. It's like, you know, it like lifts me up instead of dragging me down, which I think is always a concern with social media.
So if hopefully people check your stuff out. If someone's on here right now, can you pick one thing that they should start with?
One webpage to start with?
One resource that they...
One resource?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at it's an _way. And this is Jamil Jamal and her whole activist movement about really just self-acceptance. So a lot of it has to do with weight, beauty, but it has to do with LGBTQ plus rights. It has to do with kind of everything, like just self-acceptance, just being who you are. And it's really cool. And she's really used her celebrity platform in a way that's, I think, pretty inspiring.
Fantastic. Okay. Any advice for parents who know that there's no real role for them to go in and say, I just watched this video? Like how do you encourage your kid to kind of shift their thinking about food and body image when you're the last person to really have power there?
You know, I think that we sell ourselves short. You know, parents have more power. Kids want our approval. They don't necessarily want to talk to us, but it doesn't mean that they're not listening. And so I think it's worth talking anyway sometimes, you know, or as I'll tell my own teenagers, like, I don't expect a response, but I'm just going to say this. Or do it when you're stuck in the car with them so they can escape. Right?
Trap them
somewhere. But so I think that it's important just to talk sometimes anyways. And if this represents a shift in your own thinking, I think it's okay to admit that, or to admit that I'm trying to grow and learn, and I want you to grow and learn, and I want something better for you maybe than for what I've known or thought of myself. And you know, my own daughter always acts like she hates everything I study, and mom, just stop this. Oh my gosh, if you like talk about bodies or sex or anything anymore, it's so embarrassing. And then just the other day, I saw that she had posted on her Instagram story something that said, all bodies are bikini bodies. And I thought, okay, so she must listen occasionally.
I love ending on that note. All bodies are bikini bodies. Dr. Charlotte Markey, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.